All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Kabbalah Café. This is our first post holiday, not post Malone, post holiday Kabbalah Café class. Last week we were in the hut outside, which was really lovely. This week we are going to talk about knowledge and with a focus on the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So there's a lot to talk about. One of the classic stories of the Torah, of course, is the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And a lot of questions come up immediately when you read the story. A little bit of context, we started reading, once again, the annual cycle of the 5 books. We started yesterday in synagogues the world over. We restarted with the beginning, literally in the beginning, right? God created heaven and earth, light and darkness, 6 days of creation, 7th day of rest. And chapter 1, I always find this amazing. And no one even notices this. Chapter 1 of Genesis, it all goes off without a hitch. You read about the 7 days of creation, 6 days, and then Shabbat, day of rest, and all is good, right? God created animals on the 6th day and Adam and Eve on the 6th day, and then God rested. God completed heaven and earth, and all is good, and he rested, and that's how chapter 1 ends. And there's one glaring omission, no mention of sin. There's no mention that there was a hiccup of grand proportion between day 6 and the onset of Shabbat, of Shabbos. There's no mention. Like, it seems like all is good. Like, just had a normal day of rest, right? Invited the friends over, had a party, and called it a week. Chapter 2 is like, oh, by the way, forgot to mention. There was a little bit of a kerfuffle that happened. Slight little problem, right? Little challenge that occurred. It's very weird, very strange. Chapter 1 of Genesis, no issues. Chapter 2 introduces the trees, the complicated trees. Well, one is complicated, one is mysterious. The 2 trees that are mentioned by name are the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. The Eitz Hadat Tov Ra, tree of knowledge of good and evil, and the Eitz HaChaim, the tree of life. If you're familiar with a little bit of Kabbalah, tree of life comes up a lot, named after the OG tree of life that was in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden. And we discover in chapter 2, God commands Adam. He says, of all of the trees in the garden you can eat, except for one tree. And of course, anytime you tell someone you can't, what's the one thing you want? That which you can't have. Forbidden fruit, right? The one thing you can have anything in the world, but the one thing you can't have, that becomes the most exciting. Human nature, right? Human psychology. Sarah, you got to tell us why this happens, right? We got to break down this psychologically. Why does this happen? I don't know. But the one thing you can't have, right? Why couldn't they be okay with all they had? 100 trees, 1,000 trees, the one tree. But of course, we know it wasn't so simple. There was a nachash, there was a serpent, a snake, who got Eve's attention. We also know that there was a bit of a miscommunication. God had told Adam to not eat from the tree, because the day you eat from it, you shall die. Adam tells Eve there's actually a dispute about how the breakdown of communication happened. Some say that Adam added something onto the commandment and told Eve, his wife, God said not to eat it and not even touch it. So Adam got a little bit more, religious, a little bit more strict than he was told. Some say that she added herself, but I like this version better. I like the version better. I think it provides a more interesting, outlook. So Adam wants to make sure his wife doesn't even get close to eating it. So he tells her, you can't even touch it. Well, then the serpent cozies on up to Eve and says, hey, this looks like a great tree. Why don't you have some? She says, well, I can't eat it. Can't even touch it. We're going to die. He says, really? Pushes her against the tree. She touches it. You're fine. See, no lightning came down from the heavens to zap you. What's the problem? He says, says the serpent, I bet that it's God doesn't want you to eat from this tree. because he's concerned that because the moment you eat from the tree, your eyes will be open and you'll be, I'm paraphrasing, you'll become as wise as God. And God doesn't want you to have that knowledge, that knowledge. So God is kind of like trying to protect his domain of knowledge, trying to keep you ignorant. So she gets excited about eating it. She eats it. She gives it to Adam. Listen, once you're going in, everyone's going in on it. So Adam also gets from the forbidden fruit. And then, of course, the fallout is God says to Adam and Eve, or actually God says maybe to himself, now that Adam and Eve have eaten from the forbidden fruit and have become knowers of good and evil, we got to kick them out of the garden. We got to evict them from the Garden of Eden. So typically we think that the eviction from the Garden of Eden is a punishment in the sense of, timeout. Like you had something good and now you lost it. There's a deeper understanding. And it's in the Torah text itself. The biblical text itself says that God's rationale for kicking them out is lest they eat from the Eitz HaChaim, from the tree of life, and live forever. So they have to be out, because what if they eat from the tree of life and whatever that magical elixir of life is, now they're going to live eternally, and that's going to be a problem. So there's a bunch of questions that come up in the narrative. And of course, there's a fallout. The snake gets reprimanded. Eve gets reprimanded. Adam gets reprimanded. God famously asks Adam. Adam is hiding, right, behind some sort of bush. And God's like, Adam, where are you? And Adam says, I'm hiding. That's why you're hiding. I don't have clothes. He's like, who told you that that's a problem? Did you by any chance eat from the tree of knowledge? Yes, I did, but it wasn't my fault. It was Eve's fault. Pointing fingers. The first blame in history happens, the very first sin. The very first time somebody made a mistake, they didn't take responsibility.
It's the woman.
Huh?
It's the woman.
Literally. No, he said it's even more than that. He says, it's the woman that you gave me. Either way, it's not my fault.
No, I was thinking.
Oh, blame the woman. Yeah. But he's also blaming God.
Yeah.
He's also saying, like, you made her. It's not even me. Like, I'm the last person to blame. You see, this is like the logic of justification. Me? I'm the last one to blame. I have the least culpability. You are red-handed. You were caught red-handed. Me? It's not me at all. Bro, it's you. But anyway, I want to ask a few questions. Number one. First question is, a lot of good questions on this story. What does it mean that there's a tree that can grant knowledge? What does that mean? Like a fruit that grants knowledge? I mean, I know, so we don't have that. I know there's a water that's called smart water, but I don't think anyone actually takes it seriously. No one's like, oh, I have a big math test coming up. Let me drink a lot of smart water and I'll be able to pass it without studying. I don't think anyone actually believes that smart water will make you smarter. And yet, somehow the Torah, the Bible, would have us believe that there is some sort of magical tree with magical fruit that will grant knowledge of good and evil. What does that even mean? Question number one. Question number two, what does it mean when God says, Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now we have to kick them out lest they eat from the tree of life and live forever. Why is that a problem? Let them eat from the tree of life and live forever. Because the original, just to frame this for a second, the original reason why when God tells Adam not to eat from the tree, what does he say? Don't eat from the tree, because on the day you eat from the tree, you will die. So it sounds like, what's the problem with eating from the tree? Death. Well, what if there was an antidote to death? Well, cue up the tree of life. Now there's no more death. Aren't we back to where we started? That seems like a good thing. It seems like almost like, imagine the tree of knowledge of good and evil as like a poison, and the tree of life as the antidote. So they ate the poison. Why not eat the antidote? Again, follow the logic. God says, don't eat from this tree because you're going to die. And then they ate from the tree. Then God's like, well, now we have to come out, because what if they eat from the tree of life and live forever? What? Let's rewind that for a second. We want them to eat from the tree of life and live forever. Isn't that reversing the problem? The problem is death. Well, let's undo death. Are you with me on the question? These are very fundamental questions to the text, and nothing that I've said so far is based on any commentaries, except for the idea of touching the tree versus not. But everything else is straight up the biblical text. God says to Adam, don't eat from the tree. On the day you eat from the tree, you will die. They eat from the tree. And then God says, got to kick you out. Got to kick him out. Because what if they eat from the tree of life and live forever? Why is that a problem? That seems to be going back to the way it was before. Eternal life, up, mortality. Let's go back to eternal life. Problem solved. Seems like the tree of life is the antidote to the tree of knowledge. But again, the fundamental question is, what does it mean that there's a tree of knowledge? So I want to share with you the mystical explanation that actually, it's from Kabbalah, but when you think about it and when you hear the explanation, it turns out it's really less mystical and more practical, like very, very practical. The idea is, the key is understanding what da'at or das is. What is knowledge? Does it mean knowing something? No. In biblical language, the act of physical intimacy is referred to as da'at, knowing. It says that Adam knew Eve, and then she conceived and had a child. I'm sure it didn't mean that he got to know her, right? By asking questions. So, what's your family like? What's your upbringing? Although they were all brand new to the scene. There was probably not much of a history. So, who were your friends growing up? I just got here. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. Where do you go to college? I don't know. I have again, new on the scene. So Adam knowing Eve is, of course, a euphemism, but it begs the question, why that word? Why that word? Va'adam yada et chava ishto. Adam knew his wife Eve. Why knew? Yes, and the commentators point out because the Torah speaks, the Bible uses, let's say, for lack of a better term, clean language. It doesn't speak graphically. Great, but why? But it still has to have some sort of connection in lexicon, some sort of language connection to what it's referencing. So the mystics explain that there are three dimensions of the mind. And we've talked about this many times. Chachma, Bina, and Dat. The acronym of which is Chabad. So Chachma, Bina, and Dat. What are they? Chachma is creative intelligence. Bina is analytical understanding. But what is that? Chachma, new ideas. Bina is understanding things and breaking them down and analyzing all powers of the mind. Right brain, left brain. What's that? What's that third dimension? That is the experience of experience. It's experiencing an idea by connecting, more than connecting. It's, for lack of a better term, experiencing an idea. You can know something theoretically, or you can know it in a way, again, to borrow that term, you can know it intimately, meaning you can know it deeply. You're connecting with the idea. You're not just knowing an idea, you're connecting with an idea. So one of the keys to empathy is the idea of dat. You see, until it hits dat, you might know things on a spreadsheet, and you can pinpoint exactly like where a need is in a community, whatever it is. Here we go, here's the data. But you're not moved to do anything about it. That is where it moves from theoretical knowledge to relevant knowledge. It's relevant to me. It's where you and the idea, or you and the concept, you and the information become one, become integrated. It's where you experience the idea as part of you. The classic example that I always heard growing up about that is the story about and I've shared it many times, the story of the illiterate farmer who had the local school teacher read his mail once a week. And one week, the guy's reading the mail, and it's a letter informing this farmer that his father died, that the farmer's father died. And upon hearing the news, the farmer faints. And now if we pause the question, we can ask this, we pause the story, not the question, pause the story, we can ask a question. Why is it that the farmer fainted and not the school teacher who was reading the letter? Didn't he read it first? How come he didn't faint? And the answer is obvious. It's not his father, because his father didn't pass away. But he knew about it, okay, but it didn't affect him. Why? Because the information is theoretical. Someone's father passed away. Okay. Sure. But what does that have to do with me? That is where the information has to do with me. It's relevant to me. Human beings have this incredible capacity of that. And it's very unique. When we know something, but when we know it, like when we really know it to the point of experiencing it, you can know something theoretically, you know something because you experienced it, because you were there, because you saw it, because you felt it. So you know it, not just I know about it, you know it, because you were in that experience. When you know something on that level, it almost becomes impossible to unknow it. This is where the trouble comes in. As the mystics explain above, in the heavenly realms, they also know. The heavenly beings also know Tov, V'Ra, good and evil. But their knowledge is not like human knowledge. Human knowledge becomes enmeshed. It's almost like, I was thinking about this. It's almost like, they say that a therapist, and correct me if I'm wrong, should remain a little bit separate, a little bit somewhat detached from the person that they're helping. Because if you become enmeshed in that person's life and the problems, you almost won't be able to help them. Because you're too part of it. You have to be a little bit outside. It says that, just to give a bit of a parallel. So when when Jacob and his family came down to Egypt, remember, like Joseph was sold and he ends up in Egypt, and then there's no food in Canaan. So the whole family, and then they realize it's Joseph. So the whole family comes down. And the Torah lists every member of Jacob's family. And it says grand total 70 people. You read all the names and it's 69. Like, what's going on? What's the answer? No, including Yosef. He was up. What's the answer? The answer is, says Rashi, there was one woman who was born Yocheved. One woman who was born right as they entered Egypt, right on the border. It says Bein HaChoma, between the walls. They used to have cities or whatever or countries used to have walls as a border, literally like a wall. And they would have almost like a double wall, like in between the wall from one side and the wall, like that country and that country, in the middle of the wall, like in the width of the wall, she was born. Number 70. So they had 69 coming in, but 70 right as they came. That's the mother of Moses. Moses' mother was born. Why? So the mystics explain that in order to extricate someone from a bad situation, which eventually Moses had to do, you have to be present, but you also have to be a little bit removed. Meaning you can't be in the same predicament. Like you can't lift yourself up. Like physically, you can't lift, you can jump. You can't lift yourself up for a prolonged period of time. If you can, that means that you're levitating, which means you should monetize that somehow. Like you should turn that into some sort of America's Got Talent and take that on the road and do Vegas Blue Man Group and the levitating, and the levitation guy or gal, right? That should be the thing. But absent that, it takes someone else to lift someone else. You always need someone outside to help extricate or lift up or whatever it is, the other party. And the same thing is true with the Egyptian slavery experience. You couldn't have someone who was enmeshed in that experience take him out. It had to be even Moses himself was kind of part of the people, but also not part. He was like a Jew, but he was also like raised in the palace of. So he had, raised by Pharaoh's daughter as a prince in Egypt. So he had a little bit of that. But even when it comes to his mother, Yocheved, she was both Egyptian, but also not so Egyptian. If she was born outside, completely outside, back in Canaan, she might have been too far removed to pull, that her son should. So she had to be closer, but not too close. You have to have that balance. So when you're helping someone, you got to be empathetic. You got to care about them, but you also can't be enmeshed in the problem or else you can't see it. I mean, how many times, let's speak on a very practical level, how many times has it happened that we faced internally a dilemma and we share it with someone else and the other person has great advice, clear advice. And when you think about it later, you realize that you could have also had that clarity. And how come you didn't? Because you're inside the problem, because you were enmeshed with the problem. If someone else asked you the same question about themselves, you would have been able to give them the advice. But you couldn't give yourself the advice. Why? Too close to the situation. Too close. You needed a third party or an outside, perspective to be able to share the advice. That's how life works. And so human beings have a da'at problem. What's the da'at problem? When we know something, not bina. Bina is you analyze it, you figured it out, great. That, though, is when you experience it. Once you experience it, you can't unexperience it. Once you know it on that level, you become so intimately connected with it, you can't undo that knowledge or that experience of it. Now, above, again, to contrast that with above, it says Lamaila above, whoever they is, angels, souls, God, know good and evil, but above they don't become enmeshed in the good and evil paradigm, as opposed to you and I, when we experience good and evil, or more precisely, a complicated mix-up of good and evil, then we become confused in a way that it becomes almost a lifetime and eternal struggle to separate the two. So to grant a little bit more clarity, I want to share with you a teaching from Maimonides, the great physician and philosopher of the Middle Ages. Maimonides asked the following question. He says, how does it make sense that someone commits a sin and profits? That doesn't seem to be the way it's supposed to be. And here we have Adam and Eve sinning and profiting by gaining knowledge. They didn't have the knowledge of good and evil, and now they have the knowledge of good and evil. It seems like they profited. So Maimonides explains that it wasn't actually to their advantage, it was to their detriment. How do we understand this? Before the sin, God had told them, this is right and this is wrong, right? This is okay, this is not okay. To use food language, because I guess it was about food, this is kosher, this is not kosher. And that's how the world was divided. So imagine, right? All of our tables have a split down the middle. That's how you know it's kosher. It's got split hoops. Kidding, right? The table has a split, the folding tables. So imagine one side of the table, it's okay, it's kosher. The other side, not kosher. So these trees are kosher. This tree is not kosher. These trees are good. These trees, I want to use the word good, of the word good. These trees are permitted. This tree is not permitted. So that's how the world is broken down into right versus wrong. Good. Let's think about what happened. Adam and Eve taste from the forbidden fruit. And it says about Eve that she saw that the fruit was good, was attractive to the eyes, and tasted good, and she ate it and she gave Adam to it. What does that mean? It means that when Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit, it tasted good. And you know what? Maybe it tasted even better than any other fruit. Why? It says, stolen waters, Proverbs, right? Stolen waters are sweeter. That's what it says. You imagine those gems that we were talking about before from the Louvre, right? You imagine the ones hanging by the bathroom, right? The ones in the hallway to the bathroom, right? Or the painting that was still. It's even better knowing that it came, through nefarious means. That's human nature. Human nature is people get excited about things that are a little bit, so it was delicious. It was exciting. It was attractive to the eyes and it tasted great. So now Adam and Eve have a problem. What's the problem? What's the problem?
They're gonna die.
Well, also, but we'll get to that. We'll get to mortality in a second. Here's the problem. Before there was a clear division in the world between right and wrong. But now there's another division between tov v'ra, good and bad. And that's my definition of good and bad. So now I might draw a line going not this way, but this way, right? Going this way. And I might say, I like this stuff. I don't like this stuff. But some of the stuff that I like might be on this side of the table. You see what's going on? And now it's complicated. Now it's complicated. Before there was clarity. Good versus evil. Right versus wrong. Kosher, not kosher. Now, what do I like? What do I not like? Well, what if I like the forbidden fruit? So now, do I go by my definition of good and bad or by God's definition of good and bad? You see what's going on here? And how do I forget the taste of that fruit? Once I tasted it, can I ever delete that experience? Remember, human beings, once we experience that, connect with something intimately, once we experience it, you can't unexperience it. You can't say, oh, that memory is now gone. Yeah, I'm sure a science fiction movie or whatever can delete memories. That's part of the plot. But in real life, as it stands right now, you and I cannot delete memories. So now, one second. So now you have a clear knowledge of what is right and what is wrong. You also have as clear, if not clear, firsthand experience knowledge of what tastes good, really good, and maybe even better than anything that was so-called kosher. So now what? Now it's complicated. And forever, to the day that we pass away, till 120 years, we will always remember how good it was and always be challenged. How about one more go around, one more try, one more round. And every time we'll have to say, yeah, but it's on this side of the table. Yeah, but it's on the good side for me. Yeah, but that's always going to be a struggle. The idea of the Eitz Hadat Tov V'Ra, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, is not some sort of mysterious injection of knowledge, some sort of like supernatural, energy or bug or some sort of whatever, like thing implanted in the human condition. It's very simple. And it happens with all of us. The first time we enjoyed something that was wrong. That's it. That's your tree of knowledge of good and evil. And you can't forget that. I mean, you can avoid it, sure. You can say no, never again. You can say that, and you can actually hold by that. But you can't unexperience the experience. So the first time, it's true with every human being, the first time you ever did something that was on the wrong side of the table, and it was good, that's your tree of knowledge of good and evil. That's when things became murky, right? The first time a kid cheats on homework or on a test and gets 100 and gets praised, and only they know that they cheated on the test. No one else knows. They know. And they got rewarded. That it was good for them. But to cheat, that's where moral ambivalence comes in. That's where things become complicated. That was the first experience within the human condition. The first human being had that day one. God said, this is not kosher. They ate it. They loved it. Now we got a problem. And now I don't know what to do. Should I do it again because it was good? Or should I not do it again because it's wrong? Now I have a choice to go by God's definition of good and bad or by my definition of good and bad. And they might not always align because God's definition of good and bad, tov v'ra, is good versus evil. Mine is, does it taste good? It's a very different definition. Yeah.
Two lots of questions, but two quick ones. First, related to Chava. So when she tasted from the forbidden fruit, she immediately gained the knowledge of what's good and what's bad. Why did she present that to Adam?
No, she experienced.
She already experienced. She knew what was Hashem said. This is right, this is wrong. When she ate, she gained whatever the tree had to offer, which was the knowledge of bad and evil, and yet she chose to introduce this to Adam. So you might have answered that.
Yeah, it wasn't magical. She didn't gain anything magical. All she gained was a very good fruit. And she's
but I mean, a second later they realized that they're naked. I mean, obviously there was immediate.
Hold on one second. We'll get to the clothing soon.
Some knowledge or some that refers to. So my first question is
no, the shame.
Salmenu Mutenu in our image.
Yeah.
Adam and Eve probably were the smartest people on earth that existed at the moment they were born. They were born in the image of God. So to say that they did not know, I mean they knew whatever God image or whatever was embedded within them, whatever the angels knew, they knew, I assume, because they were born in the image. So if they had all that knowledge, yet why did Eve felt that there is a need even to go further and do something else at that moment?
So it didn't come from her. It came from the nachash, it came from the snake. So at that point in human history, i.e. at the beginning, that desire for an experience that might not be aligned with God's definition of right and wrong did not come internally, it came externally. But once it presented itself, it was tantalizing. Imagine this idea, this notion. Yes, I'll concede that is wrong, but try it. You'll love it. That's hard to resist. Someone says, it's wrong. Granted, it's wrong. It's illegal, it's immoral, it's wrong, or whatever it is, or it's not kosher, whatever it is. But trust me, you will absolutely love it. You've never experienced anything as good as what you're about to experience. It's hard to resist that. That was the nachash, that was the serpent in Eve's ear. And Eve tried it and it was amazing. And now Eve's like, wasn't trying to rope Adam into the downfall. If I'm going down, he's going down. It was more of like, this was really good. And as it says, Mayim Genuvim Nimtakin, like the stolen waters are sweeter. The things that are, on the do not, on the do not list, sometimes might be even more exciting. It's the way it is. And so Eve has this incredible experience. And she wants to share with her husband, with Adam. We'll get to the clothing in a second. But it's really not the way, it's fascinating because Kabbalah is explaining it, not some sort of mystical energy. It's like literally the human condition. That you and I are wired, this is the story of childhood. When you're a child and you're taught right and wrong, okay, well then wrong is wrong. Wrong must be really bad. It must be really bad. Everything about the experience must be bad. And then at some point, we find ourselves engaging in the negative behavior and it's good. So now what? It's not that we lose our faith in God necessarily, it's like we know it's wrong, but it still feels the experience is still good for me. So now what? It becomes confusing. And there's no way outside of that confusion. Now, a person could say, I had the experience, not going to do it again. I'm going to hold on strong and make sure that I'm going to live my life by God's definition of right and wrong, good and bad, and not by my own. Sure. But you can't tell me that there's not going to be that voice inside that says, hey, one more time, for old time's sake, right? Come on, you'll love it. After that, you'll go back. After that, you'll redraw the line. There's a huge red line. This is wrong. You'll draw it again. You'll race it. You'll redraw it. No one's ever going to notice, right? You'll take off the tape. You'll put it back on. No one's going to notice. You open the envelope. That's a federal crime, by the way. Don't do that, right? No one's going to notice. You erase the red line, redraw it. What's the big deal? What could possibly go wrong? My point is simply this. Adam and Eve eating from the tree of knowledge had the most human experience possible. They had a before, and there wasn't much time in between them being told not to eat it and them actually eating it. So it's not like it took like days. It was a matter of hours. They were told, this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is evil. The snake said, it might be wrong, but it's going to be really good. And he's like, all right, we roll the dice, and it was good. And she says, Adam, you got to try this. It's worth it. And he ate it. That's where shame comes in. That's where the story of the clothes comes in. Why shame? What is shame? Shame is an internal, it's not guilt, it's shame. Shame is an internal feeling, a sense of that type of deception. It's really internal deception, where you are enjoying something that you know to be wrong. That's shame. That's where shame comes in. Guilt is, I messed up. That's more external. Shame is more internal. Shame is a sense of, I'm falling short of what I know it is that I'm meant to be doing. Like, I know that this is right and this is wrong. I know that. There's no ambiguity there. But I also know that I really enjoy the wrong thing. Now I'm worked up about that. So people deal with that in different ways. One way is to say, well, then I don't believe in any higher authority, meaning I'm going to erase the definition. I'm only going to live by my own definition of what feels good. That way I won't have any shame and I won't have any guilt either, right? I'm going to erase it, yeah.
They also want others.
Yes, yes. Join my movement where we redefine reality. There's no such thing anymore as right and wrong or good and evil. It's all about, does it feel good to you, right? If it tastes good, it is good. And that's a movement. What's the name of the movement? I don't know. It's just the way it's historically people have chosen that path. Other people choose the path of, no, I need to go back to the original lines of right and wrong and try my best to amnesia myself, to forget about that experience that I had, enjoying the dark side, as it were. And that's it. But most of us are in that space of, I liked it, it's wrong. Now what? Now I got to deal with it. And that induces shame. It induces shame because the shame is the sense that I have not lived up to my own expectations of self, or I'm not living up to where I'm supposed to be. It's like knowing where I'm supposed to be at. It's like the gap between where we are and where we know we're supposed to be. That's where the shame comes in. It's like, I know this is wrong. Why am I enjoying it? It's like internal embarrassment. Yeah.
In psychology, there's a term for that called cognitive dissonance, where when there's an internal conflict, you either change your behavior to match your thought about it, or you change your thought to match your behavior about it.
There you go.
Yeah.
So either to resolve the conflict, because who wants to live with that conflict? Who wants to live with that shame? So either there's no more right and wrong. God doesn't exist. We destroy God to get rid of the shame. Or we try to change our behavior, right, to match up with what we know to be right and wrong, which is a supreme effort. Either way, I mean, this is the struggle of humankind. So that's why the very next part of the narrative is where God says to Adam, where are you? I'm hiding. Why are you hiding? Because I'm naked. Well, who told you that that's a bad thing? It's only when you have an awareness of that, in the sense that you're aware of temptations or desires that are not, for a higher purpose, let's say, that's when things become complicated. It's like if we just take away the clothing element of it and just go back to the eating element, it would be the same concept. Meaning, am I guilty? Do I feel shame for eating this fruit? Well, if it's forbidden, yeah, yes. That's when, if I'm enjoying something that I shouldn't, I'm going to feel shame, right? I'm going to feel shame. If it's totally fine, if it's on this side, then where's the shame? There's no shame. It's only when I began to enjoy things that I shouldn't Now I have shame. And now I need to cover up. I need to mask something. In some way or another, I need to hide even for myself so that I don't feel that shame. I got to deal with that sense of inner shame. Got to mask something. I got to deal with it somehow. Manifest in the clothing narrative. Makes sense? Yeah.
So is it a lot of just sort of like parables in a way, like clothing really represents something else? The knowledge of good and evil is not necessarily like theoretical knowledge, like you're going to be downloaded this
Right.
bit of information.
Correct.
Theoretical knowledge. It's more of a sort of like a parable for something else.
But so it's interesting because what I think, when studying the Kabbalah of the tree of knowledge, to me it's actually less of a parable. I would say the opposite. I think it's less of a parable and more of like a reality. Maybe we're saying the same thing, just using different terminology. I see it as just a reality of the human condition. Every person, the first time they did something that they were told not to do, but they got ahead because of it. It creates a conundrum. So yes, in that sense, it is a parable, meaning that story is a parable for our lives. It's just,
I should say parable, but like, in other words, like the tree of knowledge doesn't represent like this
literal. It's not
amount of theoretical knowledge. It's
correct.
a different kind of knowledge.
Yes.
Oh,
It's the issue of enjoying something that is forbidden.
And I would say it's the experience. It's the experience of enjoying something that's forbidden. You can't see, that's the thing. Once human beings have above, like in heaven, they can know good and evil and they're not enmeshed in it. Removed, because good and evil on a physical plane, they're in heaven. So they can know very well. But it's like the guy who read the letter about the other guy's dad passing away. He knows it very well. He knows the guy is deceased. He knows that. There's no difference in the knowledge between the guy who read the letter and the farmer who it was read to. The only difference is whose father was it. So above, they know evil. They know it. They don't experience it. They didn't experience it. Angels didn't experience it. In heaven, there's no evil in heaven.
but like the clothing, for example.
Yeah.
Is it more like it's less literal? Like, oh, you don't even have to wear clothing. Why are you concerned about clothing? Like it's not a literal meaning of clothing. Clothing represents something.
So I would say it's both actually. So yeah, the clothing would be a little bit more of a parable, but I think it's also literal, meaning in the literal context. So in general, the demographic of people that are most comfortable not wearing clothes are children. They run around sometimes, like streak throughout the house just because really young kids, right? Because they don't have that self-awareness. They don't have that self-awareness that comes through experience or that comes through, they don't have the sense of, what are the expectations? Where am I don't know if I have the right words for it, but there's no baggage that comes with it. When we get a little older, now there's baggage, especially in the context of the way Kabbalah explains with Adam and Eve, the idea of physical intimacy between Adam and Eve. In the beginning, the beginning lasted for a very short amount of time, would have been akin to eating something that was on this side of the table, let's say, meaning would have been just no shame, just a human experience. But once now you're enjoying things that maybe you shouldn't, and once there's complication in the experience, well, then that also manifests in other ways. And it manifested itself in the idea of the clothing. And that's why in the narrative, in the biblical narrative, it goes out of its way to highlight the clothing. Now, again, I know that we're mixing two things. There's the eating and then there's the clothing, and it seems to be two different arenas, but it's really about the same thing. It's really about how aligned are we in our physical actions, whether it's eating or whether it's, intimacy, how aligned are we with the divine intent for these things, meaning the right versus the wrong. So the more aligned we are, the less shame. But when we say, you know what, God, this is not about you. This is about me. I'm enjoying this, right? I enjoy the forbidden fruit. So then, look, you can say, therefore, God is, I'm cutting out God from my life because I don't want to live with that shame, which again, many do. Or you can say, now I'm struggling. Now I'm a tortured soul because now like I know it's wrong, but I like it. So now what do I do? But the clothing piece of it, it is used as a parable as well. The clothing piece though is so emphasized in the story. Like it says before the sin that they were not wearing clothes and they were not embarrassed. They were not ashamed. And then afterwards they weren't wearing clothes and they were. It's like it's bookended. It's mentioned. It's highlighted specifically. Not wearing clothes and no shame versus after the sin, not wearing clothes equal shame. It's the experience. The idea here is that human knowledge, which doesn't mean that I know it, but it means human experience, is an inextricable experience, meaning the experience itself you can't undo. You can't extricate, whatever the word is. You can't undo an experience. Once you've experienced it, I mean, the only thing you can say is, I won't do it again. But you can't undo the experience. You can't undo a memory. You can't undo a feeling. You can't undo an experience. So God says to Adam and Eve, please, like for your own sake, don't complicate. You will forever be tortured by that memory. Don't do it. Right? It'll be so you'll live a much easier life if you've never enjoyed the dark side, because then you can always say, this is right, this is wrong. If it's wrong, it for sure is not going to be good. But once you try it and it is good, now you're forever going to be tortured internally. Maybe it's good. Maybe God got it wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe something within me is messed up because I'm enjoying what's clearly wrong by divine commands. I don't even know what's going on. That's why there's mortality. Why is there mortality? There's mortality because once a person has within themselves an affinity for negativity, for the dark side, for evil, that means that there's some element within them that is aligned with that or enjoys that. Then if that person lives forever, then an element of evil will also live eternally. And so God therefore says, the moment you taste this, there's an expiration date. And that's why God says, once they tasted from the forbidden fruit, we got to kick them out of the garden lest they eat the tree of life. I asked before, well, isn't that the antidote to the tree of knowledge? It's not. It's not. The problem with the tree of knowledge is not mortality. The problem with the tree of knowledge is the knowledge of good and evil, is knowing evil and liking it. That's the problem, right? That leads to the need for mortality. If they were then to eat from the tree of life and live forever, now I don't know how that would have worked. Magical tree of life, I don't know. Okay, so that I'm not sure. But if they would have eaten from the tree of life and lived forever, that would have granted evil or an experience or a remnant or a memory of evil on some subtle level, also immortality. And God does not wish for evil to be around forever. The ultimate end game of life is, as the prophet says, Bila hamavet lanetzach, that ultimately death will be eradicated from the world because evil will be eradicated. The ultimate end game is for evil to be eliminated. And that happens through a slow and steady process of refinement, of dealing with this duality. It's really not a duality. It's really like I don't know what you would call that. It's like right and wrong, but good and bad, because I defined it because I have my own definition. It's about living life and slowly trying to push away the stuff that we enjoy, but is not right, that is not good, that is not kosher, as it were, metaphorically. It's about pushing those things. And we've been talking about this in this text. It's about slowly and gently, day after day, year after year, rejecting that, and thus kind of extricating the sparks from that and leaving the empty husks behind. Ultimately, to the point where evil is eradicated from the world, and then there can be eternal life. That's the end game. That's the messianic era. That's why you have eternal life, resurrection of the dead. That's what happens at the end of all the work. But we're not at the end. If we were at the end, we would know it. We would be living forever. It would be all good. There wouldn't be evil in the world. The fact that there's evil in the world means we're still in the process. We're still in the game. And our job is, look, we should not expect to live our lives like Adam and Eve in the garden before the sin, because that ship has sailed. And now there's no longer a serpent outside of us. There's a serpent inside of us that says, try it, you'll like it. Try, come on. One time. You won't do it again. One time. What's the big deal? Right? The internal voice. The serpent is now the nachash. The serpent is inside. We call it the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. The evil inclination says, try it. You'll like it. And we do. Every human being. There's no righteous person in the world that's only done good and hasn't, some even subtle way, tasted something from this side of the table and experienced enjoying what's wrong. Everyone has been in that situation. And so it becomes a lifetime journey. It becomes a lifetime experience of being mevarer, of separating out the right from the wrong, the good from the bad, when it's enmeshed with our own personal definitions of like versus not like, good and bad. That's the problem. When you say good and bad, who defines it? Are we talking about good and bad like right versus wrong, good and evil? Or good and bad like I like apples? Like, right? Which good and bad are we talking about?
So the introduction, once it's introduced, Adam and Eve introducing this experience, that's what can no longer be eradicated. Now, everyone else is gonna, maybe not born, like when you're born, you have to develop, but there's the possibility to experience the same thing, and now you're part of that same. You're part of it. There's almost no escape. Once Adam, it's already there. It's already inside. It's going to happen at some point. It's going to happen at some point that you're going to walk on this side of the table and have a good time. And on some even subtle level, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen at some point. Welcome. Welcome to the team. Now you're like all of us. Now it's confusing. People deal with it in different ways, because no one wants to live, to your point, Sarah, no one wants to live in that space of being tortured. So how are you not tortured? You enjoyed something that's wrong. How is that not eating you up inside? Well, I'll tell you how. Either I tell myself it's not so bad, or I tell myself it wasn't my fault, or I tell whatever it is. I mean, that's what Adam did. That's what Adam did. Adam, how can you live? You ate something and enjoyed it. Chutzpah. How despicable of you. You ate something that's wrong, that's evil, that's on the do not eat list, and you enjoyed it. What does it say? Me? Blame her. God, look at yourself in the mirror. I didn't ask for her. You gave me her. And then she made me eat it. That's what we do. We do that all the time, right? We might blame God also for giving us the temptation. Say, God, it's your fault. If you didn't want me to do it, why'd you give me the inner snake? Right? Why'd you give me an evil inclination? You did it. It's not me. We deflect. Or we say, it's not so bad. Maybe God didn't really mean it. He didn't. Maybe if God had tried it, he wouldn't have said it's not okay. Right? If God had experienced it, there's no way that would be on this side of the table. There's no way. Of course it would have been fine. We tell ourselves all sorts of narratives to deal with that inner sense of turmoil. Because otherwise, what do we do with that? Again, just think about whatever as a kid, first of all, it's been said that the first time a child hears someone tell a lie, it's shocking. Because what? You can say something that's not true? Is that a thing? But aside from that, someone else, but aside from that, the first time you do something, not that if you don't know it's wrong, you know it's wrong. I didn't know. It's possible that a child might do something and have no clue that it's wrong. Okay, that's fine. But imagine it's wrong. Again, simple, innocent example. I don't know, innocent, whatever. Cheating on a test, looking over someone's shoulder and writing down the answers. It's not right. but you want to get a good mark on the test. You do it, you get a good mark, and you get rewarded because of it. Now it's complicated. Are you going to cheat again? Why not? The only reason might be because you might get caught. And then you have to like deal with the internal stuff, the internal shame of like, I'm a cheater. So you're like, I'm not a cheater. I have a bad teacher. If the teacher taught it better, like I wouldn't have to cheat. You see what happens? You then blame everything and anything else to justify, huh?
And the experience is what has caused this duality where you're having a reason.
Right. Because if you never did it, if you never tried it, if you never enjoyed it, if you never succeeded while walking the dark side, you would never want to do it. I mean, there would still be a voice that would say, try it, but you would never be like actually invested in doing it until you tried it and it was great.
And like in educational programs, experiential learning.
Right.
Is how
the strongest.
Strongest brain.
How can you, so, which is a great point, because it's like, well, God told me not to do it, but I literally tried it and it's amazing. So is my education from God, in a book stronger than my own physical taste buds? Like I heard God say not to do it, but then I tasted it. Come on. Experiential learning. That's way stronger. That's why Lamaila above, they can know, I'm using like quotes around know because it's not the same knowing. They can know good and evil, but it's not enmeshed. Our knowledge of good and evil just wrecks us. It's like now it's complicated. There's no going back.
And you need or enter the Ten Commandments. Because that over time, it starts off with, okay, this fruit, and then it just spreads from there. So now it's like, well, what are the guidelines? Where does this come from?
Yeah, what if like, okay, so they generate, exactly, and that's how the Torah, right? It starts off with something seemingly innocent, like you and I could look at the story like, what's the big deal? They ate from this tree, not that tree. Oh, because God said not to. Okay, but who's the victim here? This is like the ultimate victimless crime. Like who's getting hurt? Only God's ego, one could argue. But to your point, David, it's like, well, what happens next? Now people are stealing from each other. Well, that's wrong. Yeah, but I want the stuff. And now I'm taking something from someone. So I'm benefiting it. We're going back to the Louvre. It all goes back to the Louvre over the weekend, this heist, right? It all goes back to this Ocean's, whatever, 15 that we're up to, right? So it's like, okay, now I have it. It's amazing. I have these like rare Egyptian ancient jewels. That's amazing. In order to get it, okay, one wrinkle, I had to steal it. So that wasn't right. That's on the wrong side of the list of, things. But I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying having it. And that, to me, outweighs the wrong of the theft. Well, that leads to also, harming. I mean, as the story goes, they were stealing from each other. They were stealing each other's spouse, meaning wives. They were, raping and abusing women. And that leads to that. Okay, but I'm enjoying it. And then it leads to murder. I'm enjoying it also. So then, and David, to your point, so now you need an object. You have to remind everybody. Okay, here we go. Let's reset the room. No more shenanigans, right? Like we got to reestablish right and wrong. We have 10 commandments. So we have the Torah. Went from 1 to 10. Got to broaden the scope. It started off with a tree, an innocent tree, seemingly innocent tree. And it ends up with like, do not kill, do not steal, do not commit adultery, do not do this, do not that. And it's like, okay, now we need some specific guidelines that are going to govern. And the truth is, the fact that we have 10 commandments is not a magical cure either, because now we have more information about what's on this side of the table, what's on that side of the table, and we're still susceptible to making bad choices. Why? Because that is the nature of humankind. And so what's the point? The point here is that is a very complicated experience. Experience is a complicated experience, because once you experience something, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. You just can't. You can say, I'll never do it again. You can't say, I'll forget what that was like. Because how can you? How can you forget it? You're not going to forget it. I mean, is it possible that that's something that you experienced, you can totally erase from your memory? I don't know. Is it possible? It's not only memory, right? You felt it. You enjoyed it. How are you gonna forget that? I don't know the answer to that question. That's why life is complicated. Because we've all tasted from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We've all had that experience of that knowledge, of that experience of good that's evil and evil that's good, meaning right and wrong and good and bad being all mixed up, and enjoying something that's wrong. And the question is, what do we do next? And the answer is study Kabbalah. Now, the answer is hold on. There's no magic. By the way, there's no magical elixir. Not even the tree of life is gonna solve this problem. That's gonna make it worse. That's gonna keep the status quo forever. There's no substitute. The truth is, I'm gonna finish my sentence. There's no substitute for the hard work of looking that in the eye and saying, I know it was good, but I'm recommitting to the line and I'm not gonna do it. That's if one were to say, based on Kabbalah, the purpose of life, that's the purpose of life, is to look at those experiences in the eye, not the ones that you never had. Oh, the fact that you didn't cross a line that you've never crossed and you don't even know that it's you. What kind of credit do you get for that? You get basic. That's basic credit. You were obedient to something, but you didn't know. Like, it's not tempting. The arena of life, the real work of life, is to look those experiences in the eye, the ones that you did have that were on the other side, and to say, not today, not today. And every time we do that, there's a victory, a moral victory, a spiritual victory, a divine victory. And it says in Kabbalah, Kadet Kafya Sitra Achra, when we hold that force down, meaning we reject that temptation that we've experienced, Istalek Yikara de Kuchabricha Buchulaman. The light, divine light, fills all of the worlds. The greatest light emerges from those quiet moments. Those are not the moments that make the paper. Those are not the moments that anyone else knows about. Those are the moments that you and I know about. Because we're the ones that had that experience. We're the ones that know, like, should I, shouldn't I? And we're the ones that make that choice. When we reject that, that is the whole purpose of life. Which gets back to the story. Was the intent that Adam and Eve shouldn't eat from the tree? It might have been for them to eat from the tree. Not that that's right, but it might have been. It might have been to set up this entire journey of life, or the struggle of life. Imagine a world in which Adam and Eve didn't eat from the tree and no one would have ever experienced evil. It would have been like a mini heaven, a replica of heaven, where there's no experience of evil, and you just know it. This is right, this is wrong, and obviously we're going to do the right thing. We were fated, as the Midrash says, we were fated to fall and live complicated lives. That's our portion in life. Does it make it easier? I don't know. Does it give us a sense of purpose? I think so. So the next time we face, those temptations or those experiences coming up again, now we know what to do. Doesn't make it easier, but it may make it a little bit more contextualized.
It says, we read in the parasha that within 1,500 years or so, the world got so corrupted that God in the end needed to destroy it and restart. So it's two things that I saw that I was kind of wondering. I mean, even the 7 mitzvot of the Noach was given only after Noach. If God created the world with the knowledge that after man or Adam, tasted, that's part of the sin, and he knew man inclination was very hard, why wasn't even the 7 mitzvot of the Noach given then, that they would know, no stealing, no murdering, no whatever, will be some sort of guidelines. Not saying the whole Torah, maybe that wasn't the right time yet, but some basic guidelines. Seems almost like he threw them into the pool, and some of them were drowning, some of them were whatever. And then the other thing that I found very interesting is that in the parasha it says that Bnei Elokim came down the
Yeah.
Nephilim and did like whatever you want to call it.
The worst of them.
Business here.
Yeah.
How does that even translate? Are we talking about like angels that got fallen? I thought that then they didn't have that temptation at all. So
Good. All right, two good questions.
About that,
So question number one is about the 7 Noahide laws. Like, when were those given and how come they weren't given originally? So the truth is that terminology is a little bit of a misnomer. 6 of the 7 were given to Adam and his descendants. The 7th was given to Noah, which is not to have cruelty to animals. Ivrim Menachai, not to eat from a live animal. So we call the 7 Noahide laws, even though 6 of the 7 were actually given to Noah, including respecting life and respecting family. So it was like a mini version of the 10 Commandments, but it wasn't formally given in a document. It wasn't like given like with a revelation. It was given to Adam to pass down. So to the extent that was effective, we see how effective it was, right? It ended up in abject, chaos and evil, to the point that it had to have a refresh. But there were 6 of the 7 primary ones were given to Adam. And then to your second question was, remind me. Yeah. Fallen angels, Nephilim. It says Shem Chazai and Azal, 2 angels that fell. They said to God, send us down and we'll clean up the world before the flood. We'll get everything back on track. Don't do anything rash. Send us. They came down, they assumed physical form, and they became the worst of the worst. So your question is, how's that possible if they were angels? So I don't know for sure, but I think the answer is once they assumed physical form, they also assumed the other characteristics of humans, meaning they also got the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. And you know what they say, the higher you are, the harder you fall. And that's what we see, especially if you think you're too big to fall. That's when you fall the worst. If you think like, oh, I'm too big to fail, like I can't, like if you take yourself too seriously, then if you're not on guard at every moment, like God tells Cain, sin crouches at the door. Like at any moment, like it can spring up on you. You got to be very careful. By the way, even God's counseling doesn't help always. God tried to counsel Cain, talk him down, and then he murders his brother. So, I mean, God was playing therapist over there. Why are you sad? Why are you upset? Right? He had both sadness and anger. I was like, didn't work. Next scene is he's murdering his brother. So
it's almost as if part of the rules of playing on Earth are being this human shell, which we just didn't see that one coming.
Didn't see that coming. Well, to use the language of today's class, maybe they thought that their knowledge of good and evil that they had in heaven, which is clear, this is right, this is wrong, would translate on earth. And they could also be as objective as to right and wrong here as they are there. And they soon realized that when you're here and you have those experiences or you have opportunities for those, you don't have opportunities for those experiences above. All you can know it is from like a textbook. Like, I know of a thing called evil. Like, why would anyone do that? That's crazy. Who would do that? And then you you arrive, right? It's easy to say I would never if you never had the opportunity. And then you have the opportunity. And you have that voice, whether it's inside or whether it's even outside. The rest of the populace, like, come on, you guys, new kids on the block, come on, join us for a night on the town. Next thing you know, straight down the rabbit hole. That's the way it is. Yeah.
I think it's interesting how it's such a like vast concept that's so sort of primal, sort of it's at the very beginning.
Yes. It's the first narrative.
Yeah, but it seems like it's a principle.
Yeah.
You could say.
It's literally the first story of humankind is the story of complicated experiences.
But it kind of makes sense that you have to have the knowledge of both. Because if you don't have that, then you're not going to be susceptible to it. You have to know the good,
right?
Like up there,
Right.
I've learned that this is bad, and then when you get here, that knowledge of it is like, huh, what is that? And
Yeah.
you're back in the same spot because you have that the curiosity to kill the cat.
Curiosity literally killed the cat. That's literally the story. Curiosity killed the Adam and Eve. I mean, brought mortality on human beings. It's not just the curiosity, it's then acting on it. But yeah, it's the same concept. Anyway, what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is I don't think we're meant to, obviously the ultimate is that there's no more evil and that's all gone. Great. But right now, we're meant to be in that space where it's complicated. We're meant to be in the complicated space and to fend off those opportunities when they present themselves, even though we know we would enjoy it, to still say no. It's not in my best interest. Well, that's not the right way to say it. It might be in my best interest right now, but it's not what I'm meant to be doing. It's not what God expects of me. And to allow that to, and are we always going to get it right? Likely not. But is that the struggle of humankind? It is. That's what we're here to do. So my blessing for all of us is that we should, some water, but my blessing for all of us is that we should recognize the challenge of humanity, but also the gift to make these difficult choices and to experience the little victories that come along the way. L'chaim.
Fine.
All right, that's it for today. Next week, this is going to be a phenomenal class. We talk about the concept of knowledge and apply it to the story of Jacob taking the blessings from his father without his father's knowledge. And we try to understand why that is an important piece of the story. Why couldn't he have just told his father, hey, you're going to give the blessings to a kid who doesn't deserve it. Give it to me. Why couldn't his wife have told him? Why did it have to happen without knowledge, without that? Based on what we discussed today, we're going to apply it to the story of the stolen blessings or the misrepresented taking of the blessings. So that's all next week. Hope to see you then. Tonight we have the event called Faith, Medicine, and Miracles with Ariella Kamen. This week we also have the launch of our new Torah study series Tuesday night. The Wednesday class is starting a week from Wednesday the 27th, the Kabbalah of Meaning. It's a phenomenal class, highly recommended. And we have our weekend retreat coming up on October 31st. We have a new program called Why the Jews with Brendan Murphy, who's a teacher at Marist School, traces the history of anti-Semitism into modern times as well. That's coming up also in November. So a lot of amazing things. Check it all out on the website and join us for the party. All right. Make sense? All right.
Thank you.
Oh, Fran, it's great to see you. All right, let me check the chat here for a second. Fran, it is amazing to have you here. Good. I'm looking on the messages. Why was the Tree of Knowledge available? Shana asked. I don't know if Shana is still here, but the bottom line on that is Tree of Knowledge was available to provide the challenge of that experience, meaning to provide the temptation for that experience. All right, Ellen, good to see you. Mark, good to see you. Jack, good to see you. Oded, good to see you. Frank, good to see you. Bob, Matt, Scott, Stephen, Jackie, good to see you. And of course,
Rabbi
Fran.
Ari,
Yes.
is it Eshaim? Is that Atzilut? Is that connected to the idea of Atzilut?
Of Atzilut?
Mhm.
Is that, is that what
that? Yeah, the Eshaim, was it the tree of, not the tree of knowledge? Is that connected to the highest world?
the tree of life? Good to see you, sir. The tree of life is yes, the tree of life typically is connected with the higher worlds, and that experience of connecting, of plugging into something greater than self. Again, it wasn't available to Adam and Eve after having that lower experience because it would be considered to be plugging into something eternal, which would have complicated things.
Because I think I'm hearing, I guess, being introduced more to the messianic story that at least the Kabbalah idea that what we're trying to do is almost seems to be collapsing the world that eventually bringing all the worlds together. And I don't know, is that's now the eventual goal is to, I guess, bring back the tree of life by Tikkun Olam, by refilling the vessel that brings back the tree of life. I'm sorry, just like
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's
bring
yeah,
consciousness.
it's nuanced, but in short, that is the goal. The goal is to get back to that space of tree of life. That is the messianic ideal, meaning where there's no evil and we live eternally, and the resurrection of the dead, meaning all things live and it live eternally. Kabbalah is actually called tree of life also. Right? It's like an elixir of the tree of life, which grants us this awareness of something that is higher than the struggle. But there's no substitute for the work. There's no there's no magic potion. We can learn these things and be empowered, but we still got to do the work. And the work is in the trenches. It's day in, day out, making sure that we're, doing what we're in the space that we need to be in, despite our experiences to the contrary. That's where the magic happens.
Yeah, this was excellent. This is a whole new way of looking at the story.
Well, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's amazing that it's Kabbalah, but it's so it so makes sense, right? It's very much it's almost like the literal meaning of the story, but not the way it's not the way it's typically understood, but it's like
Right.
the literal meaning of the story is that you're eating something you shouldn't and you enjoyed it. Now what? Now you got to deal with it. Now you got to deal with that experience. It's going to be very hard to forget. Anyway, good to see you all. We'll catch you soon. Catch you next week, if not sooner. Take care.